Welcome to How Now, the podcast where we talk about how to live in the now. And here's your host, Kim Martin Raymond.
Peace and blessings, love and light, and welcome to the special edition of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. I am your host, Kim Martin Raymond, and I'm a minister, spiritual life coach, holistic nutritionist, author, and founder of Redefining You, LLC, where I help my clients to realign themselves, mind, body, and spirit. And it is also the home of the 365-day challenge, where we are on day 330. So we're coming into the home stretch of this 365-day challenge. We have been challenging people to create healthy habits that will help them in their overall wellness journey, mind, body, and spirit. We've been giving little nuggets that you can put in your mental, spiritual, and physical toolbox, and that are going to help us to sustain our better self. And so if you've been following along, fantastic. If you still want to join, it's not too late. You can come in on the last 35 days. It's okay. That's the beauty of this challenge. Come in when you can and do all that you can, because it's a process. And we know that it's going to take simple steps, and it's going to take continuous steps, and we have to start somewhere. Okay, so why not start here? Why not start now? And hopefully we're showing you how. Okay, now I've been taking a little hiatus from the show as I was dealing with some health issues and also just making some personal pivots, because that's what was happening in my now. And so I made time to take a little hiatus so that way I can focus on me and being the best version of myself for this podcast. Okay, and so I've made an exception for the next couple of episodes. I'm doing a 3-part series, and we're going to be talking about, make sure I get this right too, I've got it written down. We're going to be talking about spirituality, and we're going to be talking about the subconscious, and we're going to be talking about manifestation and intuitive and creative aspects of our consciousness. And we're going to be doing, again, a 3-part series with Dr. Maria Ian, and she is a former guest on my show. And you can always go back into my playlist on my YouTube channel and see my past shows. I've been doing this for the last 5 years, and we're going into season 6 coming January. And she's been on my show twice and has talked about spirituality, has talked about the subconscious, has talked about the science of our subconscious. And we're going to be doing that 3-part series, and we're going to be starting tonight with the Unbreakable Emotional You. Okay, and so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about being fearless in chaos in episode 2. And then in episode 3, we're going to be talking about awakening God. Okay, so we've got an action-packed 3-part series in store for you. And Dr. Ian is just going to bring her perspective, and we're going to have a wonderful conversation. All things that we can put into our mental, spiritual, and physical toolbox to be the best versions of ourselves. Because the one thing that we have to understand is that we want to be in a space of being able to respond and not react to the things that are going on around us. And that response comes from wisdom, comes from knowledge, comes from a space of understanding. We tend to react when we're not sure, when we're in fear, and when we're unaware of how things are manifesting or why things are manifesting. So it's important for us to learn to respond and not react. Always looking for things to put in our toolbox in anticipation of something happening. It's very hard to hear things in a storm. It's very hard to hear me speaking in a tornado, right? And so it's important that we take the steps that we need to take when we see things happening and being able to be prepared to deal with them, not in the midst of them happening, but before they happen. So that way we're getting the best outcome. So that's what this is all about. That's what this 3-part series is all about. That's what How Now is all about. Teaching people how to cope. And that's the acronym for Create Our Peaceful Existence. How are we doing that? Okay, that's what this show has been about. That's what's been my passion. I've been talking about toolboxes, especially during this 365-day challenge, and we're going to talk about that as well. So there are things that are being prepared for in the background with regards to the How Now podcast, and I hope that you will join me in 2026 as we're making our way through the rest of this challenge and through the rest of this year, especially as we're going into the holiday season. I know that this is a time when people may go into bouts of depression. We've got all kinds of things that are going on mentally, physically, and spiritually during the holidays. And so I want to make sure that we're equipping people with what they need to not only get through the holidays, but to have something to look forward to as we're going into the new year. And so with that, I'm going to say grab a drink, your cup of coffee, your favorite drink, some tea, a glass of wine, whatever it is that gives you some type of relaxation, some type of peace. Get comfortable and enjoy the show, and I'll see you soon. Okay, so before we get started, we're going to do what is customary with the How Now podcast, and that is to have my guest to introduce herself before we get started. So take it away, Dr. Ian.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I very much appreciate being here. Again, my name is Dr. Maria Ian. I was a project manager in an earlier life. I worked with legal service providers for about 15 years. And then because of various things that happened that are too detailed to get into here now, I shifted my attention to writing a lot of what I felt, what my experiences were, what I thought was important for people to know, to put it into books. So the way Kim and I got together is because we are very interested in living in the now,
Yeah,
right? And in terms of the research and writing, and also some actual client experience that I had in terms of mental health counseling, living in the now is really the first thing
yeah,
you must ensure people are doing if you want to help them improve themselves and heal,
yeah,
right? And of course, this is such a huge, huge topic. I will just like really skimming the surface in
yeah,
this introduction. But one way to get deeper, or to get at least get closer before we get any deeper
right,
to living in the now, is by the means of understanding and knowing what our emotions are.
yeah,
So, because I'm also very much interested in spirituality, and by spirituality, I don't mean New Age or anything esoteric.
right,
I mean science. There's a lot of neuroscience today that locates, and I don't want to sound overly simplistic, or I don't want to sound technically, uncomfortable or anything like that. But there is, just going to say it for what it is, there is science that locates the spirit in our body. It says the spirit, what we feel in terms of something that's bigger than ourselves, something that guides us, right? That those are actual biological processes, right? So it's not like the spirit is, or God is, or anything is, something that's really beyond us, something that's really superior, something that's in another galaxy, or something that's in another dimension, or there's heaven up there, and then we humans are down here. All of that is very much overly simplified, but it's also wrong, right?
mm,
Yeah, because whatever is spirituality, whatever gets gets us to go beyond ourselves,
yeah,
whatever gets us to take a perspective from the future, to step onto the next horizon of our now,
yes,
Well, first, it presumes we are present in the now because we cannot do any of that
Right.
without first being present in the now. So being present in the now means knowing and feeling, being able to work with, being fully present in the biological processes that make us as a spiritual
Right.
human, right? Yeah,
Right.
yes. So that's just by way of introduction of why we're here, why is this
Yeah, that's it.
podcast titled what it is, right?
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
first, I want to say thank you for being a return guest on the show. As I mentioned a little earlier in my introduction, uh, you've been here. We've talked about spirituality. We've talked about the subconscious and the unconscious. And, this is going to be a three-part series. And so, like I said, we're starting with the Unbreakable Emotional You, and we're going to dive into that because everything is about making sure that we're putting things in those toolboxes, and I've spoken about those mentally, spiritually, and physically, that are going to help us to respond and not react to the things that are going on around us. And that comes from understanding. That comes from being in that space of saying, okay, I'm knowledgeable about what is happening with my body, what is happening in my mind, and how does that affect me physically. So it's all of these things that are coming together and wanting us to have an understanding so that way we're again in that space of responding and not reacting out of fear or out of for lack of a lesser word, out of ignorance, out of not knowing. We tend to when anything comes or we're feeling attacked. And so
Hmm.
it's important for us to create that how do I say to anticipate things prior to them happening. So that way, like I said, our response is the best that it can be, and it's coming from, a good space. It's not coming from a space of tension or of anger or of fear or of frustration. And there are many things we know in this, especially in these times, that are challenging us emotionally, challenging us physically and spiritually, and we have to find ways to be able to cope with those emotions and with those feelings. And so like I said, these are important conversations that we're going to have over these next couple of episodes that are going to help to put us in that space and to prepare us for things to come and for the things that we're dealing with right now. So yes, thank you so
Correct.
much for being here. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that beautiful addition that, brings the perspective
Yeah.
exactly there where it should be, which is sort of the first thing you tell somebody if you want to help them heal,
Yeah.
right? Is be present with the anxiety, the fears, the chronic distress signals that you have, right? People's first reaction when they're told, okay, let's get you to be calm, let's relax, they think they gotta maybe reach a space beyond. Again, it's something that you gotta go to an island and
Right.
meditate. You gotta go to the Himalayas and become a monk. You
Right.
gotta go and live in a monastery or learn some esoteric spiritual codes, right? To
Right.
get yourself to be someplace else. And that is just completely wrong. The reason why people, and I speak from the perspective of science, that's why I use that, it's wrong, right? Um, the reason why people have these ideations that, okay, I gotta go to an island, I gotta go on some abstract retreat, I gotta be, become just something totally different, learn something that's completely from out of this world, and there is enough to learn. Every religion has its own monastic codes of God knows what, right? But the reason why people sort of tend to find refuge in that is because if they were to just sit right there and there with themselves, they would have, and they have, and every human has, because that's how we humans are made, tremendous amounts of anxieties, fears, chronic distresses. Something is always going to feel wrong,
Yeah.
right? And that's normal. there is nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
Hopefully, in the third episodes, we'll get to look more into what exactly that means, right? But to have those extreme discomforts, to feel really anxious and really like even to the point where you feel your stomach is going to turn the wrong way, or stuff like that,
Yeah.
it's perfectly normal to have that. It is not normal to want to go from there to some abstraction because you think that's going to heal it, right? The correct way to go about it is, again, as we said in our introduction, right, that these emotions are biological processes and they influence every system in our body. So when we say, okay, I feel so tense,
Right.
my heart's pounding, my stomach's fluttering, my brain is turning, I really want to learn something now to get that to feel better.
Right.
That is an accurate observation. These emotions that we have influence every process in our body, but it is by nurturing them that we can then create optimal conditions for our digestive systems, our brains, our immune systems, our cellular response mechanisms, all those things. So the first thing to do is to listen and even amplify, those anxieties, those fears,
Yeah.
those extreme discomforts, that really feeling of wanting to scream, to burst, right? That is the starting point, because that's your body speaking to you. It's not some abstraction from somewhere. That's not some devil or some other galaxy that's making you feel that way. It is you,
Yeah.
right? And if you're leaving that behind, and there is actual research on people who crave extreme mystical states, that can actually very adversely affect, and all this is in my book, it can very adversely affect your physical health.
Yeah.
And this is also my personal experience because I research religion, actual religious places and institutions some time ago. But you may be surprised to know that people who then habitually get themselves into being very abstract in that sense, who really want to live apart from the world, who really want to learn those whatever esoteric whatnot codes,
Hmm.
have can have some very severe physical illnesses.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and I'm surprised.
Okay.
I said I stopped you there because, like I said, you said some very critical things, and it makes me even think. I've worked in education for a long
Mhm.
time, and have worked in preschools and with younger children, and what it makes me think of is you know w- when we have behaviors or when things happen and we try to do things to get out of a certain situation. Think about when you were in school. If you knew that you misbehaved and you would be sent to the principal's office and you know that would get you out of the classroom, you would do things to try to get out of it instead of
Mhm.
trying to stay where you are, stay in that environment and learn to cope in that environment. Because we
Yes.
aren't able to just always get up and run. When we're at work and we get frustrated or something is going on, we can't always just get up and walk away. We can't always just get in our car and drive home. We have to stay there and so we have to learn to deal with things that are happening in our now and not, like you said, run from them. And
Yes.
that's what makes me think of in the most simplistic way, and not to negate, the science behind it, but because that's what it is. We're wanting to not have to, I think, put ourselves in the place of running, but learning and understanding that fear and what those feelings mean and how to deal with those things in the space that we're in. And I think that a lot of people were challenged in that, especially during COVID, because now you're at home, you couldn't run. You had to
Mhm.
sit there, you had to sit with yourself. You had to figure
Mhm.
things out.
Mhm.
So it makes me think of that when we're talking about being able to sit with those emotions, to understand them, and not to always be looking to try to go elsewhere to resolve, but to resolve from within in that space that we're in. Because some people, if they can't even get out of that space, or if they're talking about, oh, I want to go to the beach, I want to go far away. What if you can't?
Yeah.
What do? You're just supposed to fall apart, or you're just supposed to feel sad that you can't do that. There have to be ways that we have to create those coping mechanisms, those things that are going to help us to, you know, be in touch
Yes.
with those emotions.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. And it goes, it's much more comprehensive and important than just emotions or just learning some behavior, but it is your whole health
Yes.
that is affected because these emotions, again, are biological processes. Um, Anger and all of this is very much detailed in my book.
Hmm.
Your cardiovascular rate, your immune system, how easily you fall ill or how quickly you can heal, your cellular regeneration, how much energy you exude over a lifetime, not just in this moment, but in general terms. You know, are you perceived and do you feel like somebody who's actually accomplishing something,
Hmm.
or is all this fury and being wrought up and drive and trying to do things, is that just going the opposite direction,
Right.
right? Our whole health, our complete health system, our organs, our heart, our liver, our kidney, our stomach, very, very, very important.
Yeah.
The reason why many people suffer from this irritable bowel syndrome, which is a psychosomatic
Yes.
thing, because usually doctors find nothing wrong with that, but people just feel sick for decades, you know. Uh, all of that is emotions that you don't know how to work with. And something very interesting I found in my research, but also in real life, and I'm sure everybody can identify with that, is the only emotion that is really bad um, across the map,
Hmm.
right, is uncontrolled, explosive, or chronic anger.
Mm.
You see, that is bad.
Right.
And very often that gets attached to psychotic breaks. People who just could have a break with actual reality and just follow up on that uncontrolled rage.
Yeah.
All right, which is very interesting. And pretty much all other emotions that we associate with things that are not good, such as sadness, shame, anxiety, fear. There are a couple of other ones that I have in my book. Those are, a sword with two edges, double-edged sword.
Yes.
You can use your anxiety, your shame, your guilt, um, in some, very good ways. And even your anger, if it's a controlled anger that indicates boundaries and a sense of injustice, right? But out of all of those, um, you know, this explosive, uncontrolled, chronic anger and also pathological guilt also goes sort of close with that. And all of that is very much detailed broken down in my book in detail. That's really the one thing where the alarm bell should go off and say, whoops, something bad is going to happen,
Right.
right? But everything else, like fear, anxiety, shame, even like a healthy kind of guilt, uh, various, uncomfortable sensations have two edges to them. You can use those for some very good things for yourself, you know, including things such as shame and guilt that healthy people who don't escape, who stay in the now, who reflect, who examine, who say, okay, why, what exactly is this? They take, you know, bad emotions such as shame and guilt as an incentive to make amends, become more social,
Mm-hmm.
find out what's wrong, right? Um, that's a healthy response.
Yeah.
Whereas we got anger and we got pathological guilt, which is, very rare, which is also sort of associated with these monastic, extreme, abstract, existences
Yeah.
that really abnegate their connection to reality. And that causes a lot of guilt and rumination and
Yeah.
pathological, but that's, very extreme.
Right.
Yeah. So, we can only learn from sitting with ourselves and reflecting on what makes us extremely, extremely uncomfortable and whatever, revengeful, spiteful. It has a flip side to it.
Yes.
Yeah. And if we don't bother and spend time to learn more about that, we are just going to be doing ourselves a huge, huge disfavor, huge disfavor. Because
Yeah.
you may feel, it happened to me, maybe it happened to you. I'm sure it happens to many, many other people. If I feel resentful or, bitter towards something, if I go to the root of that, hey, I want to do something about that. I want to, maybe meet the person who caused me that and find out, well, first of all, did it really happen or is it my imagination? Or can we make amends? Can we resolve the situation? There is so much good stuff connected to those,
Yeah.
what we call bad emotions that really, and of course also to the good emotions have a lot of great stuff attached to them too, but they also have some very bad stuff. There's something like excessive euphoric joy, which is not good for your body, if it suddenly hits you, and other examples. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think I love what you're speaking about because uh what it makes me think about is I think about, the fact that we don't need to suppress our
Yeah.
emotions. And I think
Mm-hmm.
so often you hear, especially in our young men, oh, stop crying, suck it up,
Yes.
don't do
Oh
this,
no.
don't,
Mm-hmm.
and constantly trying to put us in a space of suppressing our emotions. When I think about homeostasis, I think about things that we have to be able to express ourselves, but it's how we do it and we're making sure that we're doing it in a healthy way. Like you said, that's not going to harm us, but that's going to help us to understand again so that we're responding again and
Mm-hmm.
not reacting to the things that are going on because we're not clear about what's happening. But I think it's
Yes.
so important about that not suppressing, but being able to embrace and experience that emotion so that that way we can find a path through it as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just, throwing it up against the wall and figuring out if it sticks or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's important that we not suppress. And I think that we've been conditioned as a people and even in certain cultures to suppress certain feelings. Don't do that. You're not supposed to cry or you're supposed to be strong. You're supposed to be this and that. And it doesn't give you an opportunity to express those emotions or to feel those emotions in a healthy way, so that way you're not damaging your system. And you talked about all the body systems and all the things and how those things are affected. And we don't realize that when we suppress, that's exactly what we're doing. It's like we're pushing down on our heart, we're pushing down on our lungs, we're
Yes.
pushing down on
Yes.
on parts of our body that are going to harm us and
Yes.
not take us to a space of peace. And then all it does is just continues to, compound the more we suppress. So I love that you're talking about the fact that it's important that we, have those uncomfortable feelings and that we experience those emotions, but that we find healthy ways to do that.
Yeah, because it is only by learning how to respond, properly that we build resilience.
Yes.
Okay. So, there's two things to what you just said, which is very important. One is that, and there is plenty of science about this, and it's an old concept. This is not new science. This is science, at least I've heard for many decades.
Yes.
People who repress their emotions are much more susceptible to cancer. Now, I know it about cancer because I heard, you know,
Yes.
doctors like for decades ago talking about that. I'm sure there are other conditions, but for cancers especially, you're going to be more susceptible to cancer, and you're going to be slower or not as good as responding to cancer treatment also if you're repressing that, because although these are masses that weight our bodies down, that take up space in our bodies where healthy cells should grow. I mean, I'm saying it very simplistically,
Yes.
so it's crystal clear,
Yeah.
right? And the second point is the one about resilience, because here is the beautiful, spiritual part, which is that these flows, these biological flows of emotions that have actual existences inside our bodies operate subconsciously,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so they operate 24/7. When they, come to the surface, when our mind reflects on them,
Mm-hmm.
that's how we build resilience.
Yes.
Now, people, as you mentioned, who are, suppressing, who are, angry, sad, not feeling this, frustrated, putting on like a very strong facade when inside they're really,
Right.
crumbling, they do not have a lot of self-confidence. They may be projecting that they have a lot of self-confidence, but inside their bodies, inside their awareness, then when it counts, they do not have any self-confidence. So those are people who, one, break very easily, are very susceptible to medications and other things that supposedly are going to build you back up.
Yes.
They're also very susceptible to manipulation, right?
Mm.
To living in political systems where it's better to have somebody else do the things for you.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and
Wow.
then all you have to do is complain and be sick and take your medications and go to your job, and that's going to be your life, right?
Right. Right.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, I had a lot of experience with people who've lived in very uh, autocratic, suppressive
Mm-hmm.
regimes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't express their feelings. It's always, "Psst, psst, 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 psst. What did
Yes.
you say? Psst, psst."
Right.
Oh no, it wasn't me. I never said anything, right?
Right.
That's sort of their,
Right.
right? But
Right.
the illnesses they all have their jobs, they go to their jobs, they do their work, right? And they're all sick. They got their heart attacks by the age of 50. They got their high blood pressure, overweight issues, insomnia, cancers, fatty livers, things of those natures.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everything has to be like this. So
Yeah.
it's very, very, very. Mhm.
And it's fascinating. I think about when I graduated from high school, we had there were a couple of children in my graduating class that had who passed away from mental conditions
Yes.
or things, and they were students that were like at the top of the class.
Yes.
But because there was so much pressure on them to be perfect, to have things be like, it was so much on them mentally
Hmm.
that it affected them and they passed. And I was like, wow, so it's amazing how much the things that are suppressed, the things that are demanded of us mentally and physically, that it has so much of an impact that it can even cause death.
Yes. Well, yes, absolutely. It can. Absolutely.
Like
Because
you
we're
said, it starts
talking.
with dis-ease. When you think about that word, disease, we say it's dis-ease. There is something that's taking us out of that space of of I don't know, I don't want to say of regulating, but we're just not in that space of of feeling safe, but
Yes.
also of feeling confident in who we are, and all those things are attacking us at once. And then all of a sudden again it begins to break us down physically. And then how do we come out of that? Especially
Yeah.
if it's something that's been ingrained in us socially or politically. or anything
Hmm.
like that, or in our education system, that it's a challenge. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. And the reason for that is it's because these emotions, they are not fleeting. They're
Mhm.
not just fleeting stuff that,
Right,
oh, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to read some self-help book, or I'm going to go to church on Sundays, or I'm going to attend whatever group, and it's going to get fixed,
right,
right? The reason why it doesn't get fixed so easily is because these are biological processes that we are talking about. We've got 5 fingers on each hand. We cannot say, oh, I'm going to do something and I'm going to have only four,
right,
because we got five, right?
right,
And for some reason, we don't think about our emotions the same way. You know,
right,
we've got those biological processes, and they are not going to get fixed or changed,
right,
the same way as we wouldn't expect to suddenly grow a second head or have, things. It's not going to happen.
right.
It's going to be a very, very difficult, like true healing, true profound healing is, very, very difficult.
Yeah,
Um, and the reason is that we are human existence of flesh and bones in this world.
yeah,
And if we don't learn and don't accept that, once we become careless, once we let anger, explode.
right,
Well, why does anger explode? Because we have not known how to respond to what our body is whispering to us.
yeah,
And our body will continue to whisper. It whispers to us 24/7. We cannot turn that off, as we cannot stop breathing.
right,
And if we don't know how to meet those signals from the subconscious and build resilience as we learn how to respond, okay, is that anger? Is that sadness? Am I too critical? You
right,
know, is that joy? Maybe if we don't really see things, from the comprehensive whole human that we are,
right.
it's it's gonna explode at some point, because it's gonna remain unprocessed,
Yes.
right? And it's either gonna be like explosions of anger, psychotic breaks, or like you're saying, actual death, right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah,
really you are, it's gonna shut down.
yeah. And just like you said,
So
it reminds me of a car. That indicator light comes on, and okay, something is wrong. We don't have any lights that come on our bodies that say beep, 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 something is wrong.
that's a great point.
But
Yes.
we're getting signals, and sometimes we haven't tapped in or tuned into ourselves enough to know
Mm-hmm.
that that signal is coming, or we choose to ignore it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely there. It's not as obvious as like a check engine light or something coming on in our vehicle, or we notice that something mechanical is going on inside because we see that indicator. Sometimes those indicators are there and we're just simply not, we're ignoring them. We may say, oh, oh, my arm it's bothering me a little bit,
Yes.
but oh, okay, I'm just gonna stretch it a little bit. I'm gonna, do a motion and it'll feel better. And so it may ease a little bit. And then we just go, okay, so it's nothing.
Yes,
But it doesn't
correct.
mean that it's still not there. We sometimes acknowledge it or sometimes we don't, like you said, until we're laying, if until we're supine on the floor or
Mm-hmm.
we wake up and we realize that we're in the hospital and we've been there for days and we don't know how we got there. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
a matter of tapping into those indicators to me and being so in tune with yourself that you notice that something is wrong or you feel that something is wrong and you say, okay, I need to do something, I need to address it and not
Yes.
ignore it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And that is a crucial point in a person's, healing. I mean, everything is sort of a constant healing process. Is because, some people, and it's sort of natural to do that, they're going to again, fall on the flip side. That's the unhelpful one,
Right.
where it becomes obsessive rumination. It's like, oh my God, I gotta listen to, everything that's going on. Oh my God, I think my heart is doing something. Something must be anxiety, something is off, But because we are, again, we want to use the word spiritual,
Yes.
You know, we are individuals who always step out to the next horizon, and we look at ourselves from the future, like when our subconscious is always a step ahead of us,
Mhm.
right? By the time, even if it's joy or happiness, like even if it's something that's really, really healthy, still we reflect and see that tiny fractions of a second after our body has moved us in
Yeah.
whatever direction it's moving us in, right? So we got to make sure we stay with that side of things and not with then going to the other side where it's, my God, my heart skipped a beat, something must be wrong, or my stomach is twitching. What's the subconscious telling me now? And,
Right.
things of that nature, because
Right.
it's very easy to then start to obsessively ruminate, right?
Yeah.
Um, and there is something very interesting in terms of, and all of this is in my book, but you know especially, um well, then how can we make sure that what we're doing right now is we're not like being really, oh my God, something twitched, something hurt,
Right.
and I've got
Right.
to figure it out, or it's gone, thank God it's gone, I can go and do something else. Right?
Right.
How do we know that we really are, you know in the flow, that
Right.
we really are attuned, that we really are climbing, that our subconscious is really climbing the next horizon? Because that's what we humans,
Right.
as spiritually healthy beings, are made to do, right? Everything else is very unhealthy conditioning, as you said. Some people get conditioned to the point where they shut off, right? um well, we got this compassionate acceptance, right, and gratitude. These are two big self-help terms. I'm sure I'm sure people who are into self-help know that compassionate, loving kindness, and gratitude that gives us safety, right? If we are really healthily feeling gratitude and acceptance, we put ourselves into a safe place, right? So most people have those two. They have this compassionate self-acceptance, loving kindness, and this gratitude-induced safety. But there's, two more, and these also, I mean, there may be more than two more, but there's two important ones that also are biological processes. And
Mm.
most people are going to say, well, how's that possible? Well, spiritual awe is one of them, and equanimous non-attachment. I hope I pronounce equanimous right, but it's non-judgmental acceptance of stress-related bodily sickness. So spiritual awe is a big one that keeps on coming up with healing.
Yes.
If you read stories of soldiers who go into battle and they survive like these situations, like how on earth did you survive that? That's impossible. Like you were like in enemy territory for 3 days without food and water and crawling on your knees, but how did you survive that?
Right.
Well, usually, very often you get a response, well, before I got in there, I saw my mother, or I saw my wife, or I
Mm.
saw my daughter, and I promise I'm coming back. But I'm just giving a very extreme example, but you
Yeah.
can also get that response from people who go into surgery. Well, I saw my happy childhood,
Yeah.
right? I saw my best friend, I saw my father, whatnot, right? That is spiritual awe. That's your body telling you that you are on a path to health. Now, it's a biological reality. It's not some abstract spirit speaking to us. It's a biological reality that is telling you you are in this mess, in the flow of getting around and through your obstacles, right? It's spiritual awe. And regretfully, you don't get a lot of discussion of that, because for most people, when you say spiritual awe, it's something monastic, or it's something that is esoteric or is something that only very few people have because you have to learn it in special ways. But that's not true at all, right? Everybody has that. But because we repress, if you suppress, you're going to suppress your spiritual awe very easily also, right? Because you're suppressing everything else. And then the equanimous non-attachment is something else that's sort of very close to that, where you have a non-judgmental acceptance of your stress-related, anger-related, chronic anxiety-related bodily symptoms. And that is different from analyzing and thinking and, oh, something is wrong, something is this, something is that, right? Now, in my experience, the spiritual awe and the equanimous non-attachment go hand in hand because it helps you to non-judgmental awareness. It's this metacognitive reflection on yourself that is, non-judgmental, but it is not accepting as much the presence as being your, higher self that is reflecting on your capacities, your awareness, and your, it's a whole system that we humans have. And all of that is biological. So if that's a gift given to us, it's not even anything we have to learn. We don't even have to go to an island. We don't even have to, do crazy things or, I
Right.
mean, yeah.
Well, I'm wondering, would you say that's almost like giving yourself grace?
Well, yeah, well, you see, you would say that, okay, somebody who survived like a really difficult surgery or a heart illness or like living in enemy territories for whatever many days, that they are blessed. That's like, oh, you are so blessed.
Mm,
The reason why we say that, yeah, it is giving yourself grace, yes, but it is knowing your subconscious flow, which is the one thing that people love to escape from.
right,
They love to escape from that because once they start to get attuned to it, all these judgments come, hammering down on you.
right.
No, that's wrong. No, you shouldn't be trusting that. No, you shouldn't be doing this. All these labels, they hit us then,
Mm,
right? And that's then, and then it's over.
right.
You can forget about it, right? Because it's completely off. Yeah.
Yes, but the reason why I
Uh-huh.
said that is because, yeah, I know, because when you say non-judgmental and acceptance, that's what people tend to think that, oh, well, that means giving grace. That, oh, I'm giving because I'm saying that no, it's non-judgmental. I'm not doing that, so I'm being understanding of it. So I'm giving grace in that regard. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, that is an accurate representation of it. Yes,
Oh,
yes, absolutely. Yeah, but it's something that goes, again, very, very deep because the
right,
things that we experience when we have a spiritual awe, it may not always be to our liking either. That's another, I mean,
right,
I'm sort of giving you very positive
right,
examples of people who survived illnesses or wars, but you can have a sentiment of spiritual awe. Let's say you talk to somebody whom you hate and you never liked this person, I never got along with this person, always thought there's something wrong with this person, and then suddenly you have a sentiment of spiritual awe. Well, you're going to say, oh no, it's wrong. I know this person is awful. I know I never got along with them.
mm,
I'm just going to ignore it. Is something wrong with me, whatnot. But those are very important signals from the subconscious that you gotta sit still and listen and pay attention. Even in situations like something that really makes you extremely uncomfortable and where you have like tomes of evidence, like I have all the evidence in the world that I am right to really be
right,
uncomfortable, to hate this, to find this disgusting, right? And whatever spiritual awe I have is wrong. It's just something is off, right? Yeah, so you got to be very, very, very careful with those reactions. Those are reactions, not responses, right?
right, right,
Yeah.
right. Right. So like I said, what I want to do is, you know, since I'm always talking about toolboxes and
Yeah.
making sure that we're doing things that are going to help us again to respond and not react, things that we're going to be able to do to help us to see, things before they're happening. Because like I said,
Yes.
it's very hard, as I said at the top of the show, to be speaking, in the midst of a tornado. People can't
Yes.
hear when things
Yes.
are
That's
spiraling
yes.
and going on around you. And so,
Mhm.
what are some things that we can help people to put into their mental, physical, and spiritual toolboxes that are going to help us to be the unbreakable emotional them? So,
Yes. Well, one important thing is self-awareness. If you feel you're just floating, if you feel there is, something else that's controlling you, if this is beautiful sort of metaphor of you are an actor in somebody else's movie as
mhm,
opposed to being the director of your own movie,
gotcha.
right? There is this sort of artificial and very fake flow that also can be very comfortable on the other hand, because
Mm,
it's always taken care of, it's getting done, somebody is listening. I'm an actor at least, right? I'm happy with being that,
right,
right? Those are moments where you gotta be careful, right? What is really you being the author of your own actions, you being an agent in your life and the director of your life,
yeah,
right, is very intimately connected to how your brain is able to predict and respond and interpret those bodily signals that are responses. I know this is very multi-layered to
yes,
the signals from your subconscious, right? And one good way of making sure you are truly grounded, in conscious awareness is by fine-tuning your intentions. You know, do you know what you intend? Like you're saying, you can't talk in a storm.
right,
Well, what do you intend in a storm?
right,
If you are able to set an intention in the storm, well, okay, you're a very healthy person all around,
hmm,
you know.
yeah,
So I would start with first be aware of the multi-layered being that you are. You have, you know, for you to be an author of your actions and to be an agent that directs your own life, right? That is intimately connected to how your brain predicts and interprets, your bodily feedback to signals that you're getting from your subconscious. So understand that's how multi-layered we are. It's like peeling back, an onion,
mm, yeah,
almost, right? So, and learn how to set an intention in that storm.
that's
Yeah.
one protection.
And
Yeah,
that's where you're going to know it takes patience. It takes, very fine feelers. You got to have very finely attuned feelers, right? Um, and be very sort of cautious with people who are projecting this confidence, who are like, because
yes,
those are the weakest. And I don't want to put anyone down, but those are very, very weak people, but they can cause a lot of damage because they look like they are super strong.
yeah.
Like they are gonna,
Those are ones you need to check on.
yeah, yeah,
We hear that
mm-hmm,
all the time, but I love that it
yeah,
starts with that self-awareness,
mm-hmm.
and those who are seeking to or are having some difficulty in figuring out how to find that level of self-awareness. Is that where they have to where they should partner with someone to assist them with that, or does it start with journaling? I'm trying to think very baseline so that way,
Yes.
if
Well,
they're saying, okay, uh-huh.
yeah, the journaling is a good way to start, but journaling again can be a little challenging because we are storytellers by nature,
Mm,
you know.
mhm,
So
mhm,
it's very easy for anyone to start to journal and go down routes and loopholes potentially. Also, that if you are not
mhm.
aware, it can really get you into another rabbit hole of,
Gotcha.
okay, I just, it's just not working. It's not for me. It's too complex. It's going off the tracks. I'm feeling tired.
Mm.
I'm
Just like you said, you may not be able to tap in if you're having issues with self-awareness and you
yeah.
have this misconception. If you're journaling it, you may be journaling that misconception too. So that makes sense.
Yes,
That
exactly.
makes sense. Okay.
Exactly. Yes, yes. And it can be momentarily a release, but over the long run, it's not gonna get you, uh, where you want to be in terms
Right,
of being
right.
able to set an intention. What I would say, but that's also the most uncomfortable and the most difficult one is, listen to your spiritual awe that is speaking to you in those circumstances where you've got all arguments in the world of to not listen to it. You know,
Mm,
yeah, and now I don't mean to go up to your enemies and say, "Oh my God, I love you. I know you're my enemy, but I love you." That's not at all what I'm talking about, right?
right, right, right,
But
right,
I guess you know what
right.
I'm talking. Just uh, attune yourself more with your biology when you get into a situation where you have all reasons to feel, okay, this, I hate this person, I don't like this scenario, this is not for me, this is repulsive, whatnot. But if you then have this spiritual awe, insight, feeling, pay attention there,
Yeah.
because those are the very, very hard nuts to crack. But if you can crack those, you can blow, you can really, like, sort of get, blow into different universes and, like, oh my God, how did this happen? Well, I just really had to sit with that hatred, disgust, disillusionment, resentment, but I had to sit with it
Right.
because I felt, there's something there. Yeah, so and sometimes, okay, let's say we don't have that. Well, thing is, in my experience and what I read and what I researched, there is always that spiritual awe. So I don't want to say you
Right.
should really put yourself into situations that are uncomfortable, thinking you're going to figure it out. No, that's not what I'm talking about,
Right.
right? No, I mean,
Because
you
you don't
shouldn't
have.
put yourself into situations that are dangerous. You shouldn't create problems. That's not at all what I'm talking about. But if you do have that spiritual awe
Right.
in a moment that's really so disgusting, disreputable, back. I don't want this. This is not for me. I have, hundreds of years of knowledge that this is totally wrong, but you still got an insight, you know. It can be very
Mhm.
fleeting, Do not suppress that, right? But just sit and see what's there, because there's like a pearl, at the bottom of heaps of garbage, right?
Right. Right. Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
I know it's hard, but yeah.
Yeah, like you said, so there are so many dynamics to this. It's like you said, there are so many layers to this,
Mhm.
but just being able to get to that space of
Yes.
self-awareness, of getting to that
Yeah.
space of understanding, like you said, like we're spiritual beings, having a human
Yes.
experience and being
Yes.
able to tap into
Yes.
what that means, because if we don't tap in or we don't touch those points of who we are biologically,
Mm-hmm.
we'll miss out or we'll experience the negative sides of those things because
Yes.
we can't ignore, the space that we're in right now, the shell
Mm-hmm.
that we're in, the vessel that we're in right now. We can't ignore that. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's important to be able to understand and embrace and to to determine, what it is that makes us, who we are. That's going to help us to get to that point of tapping in and being that unbreakable emotional you. I think that that is awesome. you know
Yes.
so
Yes.
as we're wrapping things up, I think it's important that uh, people stop and really tap in, hone into themselves, really sit with themselves. And that's something that, can be difficult to do, especially if we're not in that space of self-acceptance. If we're in that space of self-loathing, or if we're in that space of not being pleased with who we are,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's difficult to get to that space of
But
self-awareness.
that's a
So
great
some of us,
thing.
they
It's
don't
a
like
great,
what they see, but it's
yeah, but that can be a great thing. Not liking what you see can be a great thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think that's it. It starts with that. It starts with that self-awareness. It starts with being able to say, okay, this is where I am now, and I need to start taking steps to move forward from there.
Yes, because the thing is, you are moving forward right now, if you want it or not. The question is, are you going to use that to be healthy and of service to your environment, or are you going to use that to inflict damage on yourself and to inflict damage on your environment? But you're moving, you're going to move. There's
Yeah.
nothing's going to stop
Time
you.
wait, time waits for no one. Time waits
Exactly.
for no one. Okay,
Uh-huh.
like I said, this has been a wonderful conversation. I encourage people to purchase your book, to read about the unbreakable emotional you and those steps to keys to de-stressing and going beyond burnout, all of those things, because it's so important for us to get to that space. I was talking earlier about the holiday season
Yes.
and this being a very emotional time for people. This is a time when depression is high.
Yes.
People are looking at their situations, or they're looking at how the year has manifested for them, and there are just so many emotions that come along with that. And it's so important for us to have those tools that we need to be able to navigate through this and not get to that space of feeling defeated, or get to that space of feeling
Yeah.
despair. And so it is
Exactly.
important that we tap
Exactly.
in so that way we can get the
Two
healing.
flip sides. There's two sides to every coin,
Um,
accepting those, outbursts of uncontrolled anger to everything else that we mentioned. There's two sides to that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
just to experience it so that way we know what it looks like and to be able to identify
yes.
it so that the
Yeah.
healing can begin. Okay, so
Mhm.
before we close things out, tell people how they can get in contact with you and if they're interested in getting your book. We're definitely going to put the link in the description to tell people how they can go about getting the book, but also just tell people how they can get in contact with you if they're interested in
Yes.
learning more.
Please do share my LinkedIn profile as well. And I think that's the easiest way. Messaging on LinkedIn is the easiest way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because those I get right away. Yes.
Yes. Okay. And then also, as I always close out my show, I always ask, how are you living in the now? How are you navigating in this space that we're in, politically, socially, emotionally? There's a lot to unpack there, but just curious, how are you living in this now?
Oh, well, me right now, I am just tremendously looking forward to writing another book that focuses, like everything I write about is according to a certain system that's not there in people's faces when they open a book, but that's underlying them.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to focusing on one special aspect that I think is very important for health, together for also for spiritual subconscious health.
Yeah.
Obviously we care for our liver, for our brain, for our bones. That's all important for our health. But there are some parts of our body that have more in terms of spiritual
Yeah.
um, well-being, And so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to also sort of breaking down further these sentiments of, like, disgust and suppressed issues and
Yeah.
um, all those bad emotions that really make you want to say, oh no, I'm not going to worry about that. We're just going to do something else. It's going to go away. Oh, it just momentarily went away. It's going to be fine. Oh, I read a funny book. Oh, it's go. Everything's going to be fine. Blah blah. Whatever.
Right.
Watch something interested in television. I spoke to a friend of mine. Everything's going to be fine. So no, right? It's not. It's never going to be fine like that. Never, because we humans don't work like that biologically. The way we were created. Okay, we
I
don't
love that.
work like that.
Right.
We we need to sit with our disgust, our fear, our anger, all that stuff,
Right.
and peel back those layers and look at the flip side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I think on the flip side of that, there's something beautiful. Again, like you said, it's
yes,
about coping, creating our peaceful existence. And how do we go
resilience.
about doing that? Just like you said, resilience and self-awareness and all of those things that are going to help us to be better versions of ourselves through
Yes.
understanding. Okay,
Hmm.
so with that, I'm going to say thank you so much for starting us off in this three-part series of getting us to that space of self-awareness and getting us to that space of understanding the importance of healing
Yes.
and of being present with ourselves because that's what's going to move us forward as we go through the many phases of our lives. So like I said,
Hmm.
people know they can get in contact with you through your LinkedIn bio. We're going to place that in there. We're also going to place a link for you to be able to get the book, The Unbreakable Emotional You.
The
And again,
more emotional you are, the more emotional you are in a good way, in a healthy way, the more unbreakable you are. Again, as we said, people who are not emotional are very breakable. Yeah.
that's it. That's it.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Mhm.
we're trying to get you to that space. So that's something that you can put in your toolbox for now. And with that, I'm going to say thank you again for being with us. We're looking forward to
Thank you for
part two,
having
where we're
me.
going to be
Yes.
going a little bit deeper. We're going to be continuing to
Yes.
peel back this onion as we go forward.
We're gonna be
Okay.
fearless in chaos.
Fearless
Fearless in
in chaos.
chaos.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's
Mhm.
episode two, and that will be coming up. And again, until then, make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Make sure that you are being self-aware so that you can be the unbreakable emotional you. And with
Thank
that, I'm going to
you.
say thanks for joining us for this edition of the How Now podcast, where we talk about how to live in the now. And until we see you all the next time, I say peace.
Yes.